Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to another one of these. And if you caught me clearing my throat, that's your own fault. We're waiting for Chris to join us. So in the interim, we'll record without him because that's the way we roll. Crystal Palace. I will start off by getting the ball rolling and saying it's official. We have never lost so many games of Premier League top flight football ever. Ever. Never, ever have we lost so many games. But we don't need to worry about that because, as Ange has explained to us, it's not Pythagoras' theorem, whatever that may be. It's because we've been overstretched. That's what she said. And it's because we played in Europe and because we played up to the quarterfinals or the semi-finals of the Carabao Cup. I think he's just making it up as he goes along at this stage. Some people, and I've got to say, if you have a look on Facebook, there's plenty of them out there, think that he comes speaking the truth and his tongue is not forked. He is descended from the angels at the top of the mountain, and he knows everything, which is wonderful. So, Tony, how are you feeling to be involved? Even as vicariously as we are, because I got pulled up by somebody yesterday. He said to me, "Do you actually support Spurs?" Yeah, that's right, mate. I put my brain in a jam jar and get my scarf out. That's what I do every single morning. How are you feeling? How are you feeling, Tony? How does that Tottenham blood pumping through your body? How does that feel?
How does it feel? Let's say I think I've been embalmed and stuck in cryogenic suspension because that's about as much feeling as I have for this clown that we have in charge right now. It's using your analogy about being descending from on high. Yeah. He brings forth the one commandment: "Thou shalt not take accountability." Yeah. And that was so evident in his presser yesterday, where everything was the royal we. We weren't good enough. We weren't this. We weren't that. No, mate, you weren't good enough. You haven't been good enough. You were never good enough, and you've now proven it beyond a shadow of a doubt. As for yesterday, loads of people are writing it off as a nothing fixture. It's funny because Crystal Palace didn't write it off as a nothing fixture. They've got an FA Cup final next weekend. They've got a manager who actually understands the value of winning things and keeping a winning mentality going.
I don't believe you. Surely not. Crystal who? I've never even heard of them. And they're in a final? You mean they're focused? Their manager, who was drawing lots of games as he was finding his bowling length, has now perhaps turned a corner, thanks to Dr. Tottenham and his 24-hour all-you-can-eat call-out medical service. And they're going into a cup final. I don't believe it. No. We're the mighty Tottenham Hotspurs.
Well, you say mighty. I mean, I'm not. I think we may need to look under mighty in the dictionary, and you won't see Spurs anywhere near it. No. It's crazy. I understand tactical changes, and I understand that sometimes you may want to rest one or two players, perhaps, to just sort of just to make sure that they're going to be match fit, and they're fully focused. I get the odd thing, but the thing is that Palace yesterday only rested one of their key players, one of them. That was all they wanted to do. And when you look at the form that Eze is in right now, why would you want to stop him? I know there's the risk of injury, but there's also the risk of him actually getting better and better.
Well, hang on. I just, if we can just pause the tape there. You haven't been Mirandized. You're unaware of your rights, but there is the risk. There is the risk of Eze getting injured. But there's also the risk of a donkey falling from the sky and killing him. Because in the world of Crystal Palace, and again, in the world of lots of other Premier League teams, playing football, yes, there's an element of risk. It's a contact sport. But it's only under flange ball where you could pick up not a season-ending injury because the coach doesn't know what he's doing. So every time Spurs players go out, there is a distinct possibility, not just a chance. There's a distinct possibility that could be the last time they're lacing up their boots on a match day for weeks, perhaps months, because his training has been abysmal and his tactics are so poor that you are, to use the phrase, setting yourself up for a fall by playing with him. or playing under him for now. I mean, the guy is just but he's living in this detached space where he has created this narrative for himself, which I'm sure is very cozy and warm and comforting, whereby it's got nothing to do with him, apart from all the glory, all the good bits. Oh, we've got to a final. I mean, he was actually saying in the press conference, and I'm going to come back to this because it was just chilling. I've had to manage players like Mickey Van der Ven, players like Madison, players like, and it's like, I just don't know how to express it. It's like he's taking credit for brands that are stocked in his store. He has had nothing to do with bringing them to the club. He's had nothing to do with anything apart from corrupting the circumstances within which they operate for us, the paying public. And he doesn't like hearing what we have to say.
I think it's fair to say that Ange loves dealing in alternative facts, because he loves to pick and choose those things that are convenient to his narrative and to his narcissism. But the rest of it is not his fault. You know, it's I've had to manage all this. I've had to manage that. We've had all these games to manage. Oh, I'm sorry. You mean when you're actually trying to be successful, you have to play more games to actually be in more competitions. So therefore, that's now a problem. Okay, let's just deconstruct that for a second.
Yeah.
You're actually being successful. Now you're moaning about the fact that you are in multiple competitions because you've been successful.
Well, this is the other thing. I had to, as you know, I went out with a pal this morning to have a look around Birmingham, and that was great, and I enjoyed that. Although I fell over and I fell off my skateboard, and I don't own a skateboard before anybody gets hysterical and starts responding to stuff that doesn't actually exist. But no, I haven't had the chance to go through the videotapes yet. But I think in his first season, he may have said that there was too much football. I think it was when the injury started to happen, and he was bemoaning that there was too much football. And now he's being able to play more football. He's being able to pursue these things, because don't forget, first season he was out of the competitions as fast as you like. I mean, that cup game against Fulham, and I can't remember who he blew it against, but he did the usual Tottenham thing of fiddling about with our best 11. And through, in my opinion, a number of cup games. And then this season, we're in the cups a cup, the Carabao Cup. We got through to, was it the semi-finals, I think?
Yeah, semi-final, yeah.
And he's making out that was a big task, a drain on resources, which is just incredulous, is the only thing, that's the kindest thing I can think of saying. And now he's blaming the Europa League and saying, oh, it's not Pythagoras, he's... The reality is, and I know I keep going back to it, and I'm boring myself, but with the exception of the last team, so the previous, what would it be, 11 or 10 or 11 games we've played in the Europa League have been against sides who were between 6, 7, 9, 10 to 1. And just to put that into simple language, you wouldn't back a horse at 7 or 8 or 9 to 1 unless it was in the Grand National. Because it's the same as just buying a bloody lottery ticket.
With one or two exceptions in the Europa League, we have played, the majority of the teams that we have played have basically been Scottish Premier League standard. So,
yeah. Well, that answers its own question, doesn't it?
Exactly that, which is why I made that. I was deliberately making that point. It's so really, I don't see how that can be that much of a drain on resources for, as you quite eloquently said it, the mighty Spurs and our esteemed leader. With all the resources that we have at our disposal, with the wonderful training ground, holiday foot spa village, all of that, with our backroom staff of the four poison dwarves,
the stellar talent pool that is our team associates.
Yeah, what is it? Here fuck all, see fuck all, no fuck all, can't do fuck all. I think that's what they're called, aren't they?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because referencing Celtic, I mean, your Scottish football there, because straightforwardly, he was unable to compete in Europe. effectively or meaningfully at Celtic because they were dross. And that's a breaking news for some of you. Anybody Australian listening to this will be absolutely delighted to hear that there's another nationality that I don't have any time for because they can't play football very well. And you can come at me with Dave Mackay and Steve Archibald all day long, but if you've got any photographs of anybody in colour that I can get excited about, anything that happened in my lifetime, which was in fact Steve Archibald, but still talking decades ago. But they weren't able to get anywhere in Europe because they're just no good. Just
It's
no good. No good. I mean, there isn't a more succinct phrase in the English language.
well, using this this thing around having to manage multiple streams of competitions. As an old manager of mine once said, exposing yourself to the risk of being successful. You know, it's funny because even though Liverpool did get knocked out of the Champions League stages, they managed to stay competitive, and they managed to go and win the league. Arsenal, what you say about them, whether we love or hate them, whatever. They went really deep into the Champions League, into the semi-final, and still remain competitive. I'm sorry, but there is no excuse. I mean, and they've had the same challenges. People go, oh, but we've had 12 or 13 injuries, and you're telling me these guys don't have injuries too? The likes of Fulham and Brentford have all had injuries. Every club has injuries. They're saying, oh well, if we'd missed as many as we've got, and there's this insanity that's within the parts of the fan base, not the intelligent fan base that we know of, but the other portion where someone clearly, literally, I mean, literally stated to me on Facebook yesterday, if we'd have had all of our players this season, we would have been third easily.
Fuck off.
And
but I said to you before we kicked off, and I'm going to say it again because I'm going to say it again probably before I go to bed tonight. The problem we have is I saw on Facebook as well a comment where people were tearing to shreds his post-match presser after Palace, and somebody said, "Oh, you're so entitled." Blah, usual twaddle pro things. They got 150 plus likes. Now, I know some of them are, don't speak English, can't read or write, bots, whatever you want to call them. But that's a lot of people that agree with something that's fundamentally stupid.
Probably 95% Australian, probably.
Good, eh? But I genuinely believe that this is a fallout because you've got to believe that all this wokery, all this nonsense that we've been through in this generation has been through schools, universities, workplaces. That's where it's been led. This is how Stonewall mounted their campaigns because they realized your average Joe were not bad parents, not bad people, not fundamentally flawed people. And the sick, twisted stuff that they were pushing, which includes this DEI cobblers of giving everybody a fair go, no matter how painfully rank individuals they are, has seeped into this thing whereby Ange is a nice bloke. Well, no, he's not. He might look a bit cuddly, but he's actually a narcissist. He ticks all the bloody boxes of being a narcissist. I'm not just shouting this word out because it's kind of in vogue, like saying somebody's toxic. This takes us back to this whole thing. Everybody I don't like is Adolf Hitler. You can't. You need to nuance the way you speak and hopefully the way you think, which then forms the words that come out of your mouth. But I think this business of giving him a fair go and don't be so mean and blah blah blah. I just want somebody, and this is what I'm talking about with Angie's moaning and his reimagining and reforming what's happened. What he's describing is doing the job. These aren't tasks. These aren't the 12 tasks of Obelix. You can keep your Pythagoras' theorem, mate.
These your Hercules and everybody like that.
Yeah. And your stone cutters chipping Norton rubbish tail. You can keep all that. It's called doing the damn job. And I had a situation a few months, well, it wasn't a couple of years ago now, where these guys now saying, "Oh yeah, we're going to get a good tip out of you." And I said, "What for?" I was laughing. There was no humour. And when they sort of started to list the things, the wondrous things they'd done, I said, "Yeah, you've just described doing your job.
Yeah.
We haven't entered anywhere close into the tip zone yet.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Are you working for free?
Yeah, exactly. If all that other shit was for free, I think we need to talk about the money that I paid a couple of weeks ago, because this doesn't add up to me. I'm not one of these unreasonable people that wants jam on everything, but if you want a tip, I want to see some jam.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
all we get at Spurs, as we know, is jam tomorrow.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
he's sitting there telling us, well, I had to manage Mickey Van der Ven. I had to manage. Yeah, that's the job, mate. And I've put on my thing there. Yours is very rude, of course, because you're a nasty individual, biggest and a misogynist and a homophobe, as we know, and standing member of the community. But he mentioned used the word navigate and navigator or navigated about 10 times in his post-Palace presser. But this isn't navigating. This is called doing the job. The bus driver doesn't tell you that he navigated the high street and then navigated round the post office and went up to the library, to the cemetery gates, and then dropped you off at your house. This isn't a tale of daring do. It's the job. You drive
Well,
the bus, and when the ding ding goes, you pull over and let the little old lady off, and then you pull away again. It's the job. You're the bus driver.
well, look. Well, let's go with this navigated scenario here. You've just lost 20 games in the Premier League season. I'd say that's akin to somebody navigating into the iceberg that sunk the Titanic. You know.
Yeah, I mean, if you're navigating, mate, I think your idea of where magnetic north is and the rest of the world might be at odds, because
Yeah.
your navigation has all bar the fact that there were three crappier sides than us managed to avoid relegation, and yeah, you're in a final, and of course we call it a European final because that makes it sound much bigger than it is, opposed to saying it's in a final where to get to that final, the path that you've navigated is against 10 or 11 or 12 sides that were all the prices of racehorses in the Grand National, apart from the ones that they just knew were going to fall over and they were priced at 10s, 20s, 30s, 40s to 1s. So
Well,
the rubbish that we've beaten to get to where we are, fantastic. And that leads me on to my next question, which we started to go into before I hit the button. So instead of me asking you or anybody else, do you want us to win? How do you feel about us winning? Because I think this is one of the occasions we can bring feelings into it, because we've done the facts to death. The facts are he is the worst coach anybody has ever seen in a lifetime. Forget Spurs. We know it's since the final whistle went at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium without any naming rights because they're a bunch of monkeys as well. But at full time, no coach had lost more games than they had won. That's merging his two seasons together, which you all wanted to do last week. You were telling us he finished fifth first time around. Well, that's all gone down the pan since then. He's lost an extraordinary amount of games, a record-breaking, historic amount of games. So how do you feel, Tony, about us winning this cup, about him winning this cup?
Incredibly conflicted is probably the way I would describe it, because obviously as a Spurs supporter, and yes, contrary to popular opinion on some parts of the social media stratosphere, but having not liking Ange doesn't mean that does actually still mean you're a Spurs supporter. It just means that you don't share a different view. But of course, I'm toxic and I'm entitled and I don't know anything about football. Blah blah de blah de blah de blah. Shut up,
you nasty little tart. I mean, you're just having your cake and eating it, young man. That's what you're doing.
That explains why I'm about 3 stone overweight then.
That's what she said.
Yeah, exactly. Missus, but I didn't say where I was overweight though. Nudge, wink, wink.
Nudge, wink, wink.
Yeah, but yeah, I am horribly conflicted because, of course, I want us to win a trophy. Of course, I want us to get rid of that horror, get rid of the monkey off your back, lay that ghost, whatever you want to call it. Of course, I want that trophy cabinet to have a dust off, and we could stick a nice bright and shiny new trophy. Of course, I want that. I want that as much as anybody. I am just conflicted because I don't want it with this twat, because he is toxic. You call about everybody else being toxic. He is toxic. He has reduced this club to a laughing stock. We were well on the way anyway. To be fair, Levy, with all these actions and the way he's done things, etc. We know that we've documented all of that. But he grabbed that mantle and ran with it so well. He's now actually exceeded Levy's expectations about how far down he can actually take us.
It's quite ironic, isn't it, for a guy that decided to, again, I'm going to use the word in relation to this guy, hijack. He managed to hijack the Spursiness and the not winning trophies, and make it his own. I mean,
he's perfected the art form. He's perfected the art form.
This is his campaign, and I'll tell you exactly how I feel. And if there's anybody really stupid listening, I hope you're still with us, because I really think that I speak relatively clearly when I'm not disappearing up my own orifice with riddles and rhymes. But I tell you how I feel is when Sergio Ramos was in charge. Was it Ramos?
Sorry, Juan de Ramos.
Juan de Ramos. Yeah, sorry. When Juan de Ramos was in charge, when we won the cup, I was leaping around the front room like a maniac, because it never occurred to me that I had any feelings that weren't just basically kind of ambivalent about the guy. I didn't hate him. I didn't like him. I didn't really know him. I didn't have feelings either way. And I just hoped that we had enough to beat Chelsea. But this guy, I can't stand.
That game, H. I know. Yeah, I remember that game, right? My daughter was 6 or 7 years old at the time, and I jumped up and screamed so loudly, I think I scared her into the afterlife. It was. I've never, we know, like I said to you before, I was, not this some sort of bragging rights, because there's loads of people there, but I still, vividly remember 1984 when we won the UEFA Cup.
Yeah,
I was there as well.
But that was an amazing game. I'm just going to say, for the benefit of the tape, I really do think that was an amazing game. And I said to you, I was living in that same crazy parallel universe where there was no internet, no nothing. I was living in Germany, and my dad brought home from the I think it was the Sergeant's Mess, because it had a stamp on it at the back page of the Daily Mail or whatever it was, and it was with a picture of the lights and all the. And I was just still euphoric because I'd sat up and I was leaping around the front room in my dressing gown because I was a teenager, and it was an incredibly memorable thing. And Keith Birkinshaw and all those people, I had a real bond with, a real love,
and they were 100%.
Total passion. And I was new to the game. And like I've said to people who've heard before, by the luck of whatever, or the curse of the devil, I could have been a Hibernian fan. and subject to a life of misery, but I've been subject to a life of misery with Tottenham, and it was a really important deal for me, that game, because we'd already we won the FA Cup and we were a cup side, and I believed it because we were living it. But this guy, I don't want him anywhere near the club, and I know it sounds selfish, but I'm allowed. And these aren't facts that I've hijacked and manipulated. These are my feelings. And just as people are entitled or allowed to have really ridiculous feelings that they want to impose on us, inflict on us, and tell us, well, he's a brilliant... No, he isn't. He's an absolute nipple. And I don't want him to be associated with anything positive that happens, because he's left our league performances with all the panache and majesty of a burnt-out car. I mean, no coach has lost as many games as he has at our club, and few football fans have seen Spurs lose so many professional football matches, which he's just managed to convince a whole load of dummies, a whole lot of woke incel dummies that, no, it's just a league, isn't it? Don't worry. We're having a really important night,
And not forgetting, of course, and then the next thing gets trawled out by the Anjing crowd is, well, we got to give him time. It's a rebuild. When there was a classic one yesterday. When a rebuild, you have to get to the bottom so you can start building from the ground up. And
which life school did that word of wisdom come from?
I have no idea. It was probably from the University of Morons.
I mean, listen,
if
I can suspend my disbelief, right? So I'm sitting watching the Batman film with all the great big Hollywood names in, and he goes, "You know why we fall down, Master Wayne, so we can get back up again." And you little lump in the throat, and you think this is lovely sage words of wisdom from Alfred. Doesn't really mean anything. It's a movie.
yeah,
These are our lives. This guy is flushing down the toilet week in, week out. And for all of the, the pointing of the finger and sort of saying, I don't think really Richarlison's up to it. I don't rate Solanke. I think Romero wants to leave. For all of that mumble and noise, they're not actually the worst set of players in the world. It's evident that they aren't being coached. We've not had
well, yes,
one single player come out. And this is where I'll just lead this now. He then went on, which I thought was extraordinary, but then we're dealing with a narcissist. And if you don't know what a narcissist is, look it up in a dictionary, kids. All right? Look it up in a dictionary, because not everything is a narcissist. Like a bad apple isn't a narcissist, right? It's a certain sort of person. And this guy ticks all the flipping boxes. And he called out without naming him, he called out Mikey Moore as not making a what was the phrase he used? A compelling argument for him to be included in Spurs squads, and that his view was that players should be ready to take their chances.
well, the only way
Well,
they're ready to take their chances is if they're being coached effectively, so they're able to take their chances. If players can't just do it on their own, they don't just suddenly turn up every day and go, "I'm going to work really hard today, and then it will come to me." No, they get coached. Every good manager knows how to coach his players to get the best out of the players, and
yeah,
also you coach them to fill a role. So, for instance, if you want someone who is a right winger, you go, right, we're going to coach you about being a better right winger. We're not going to do what he's done to Archie Gray, which is thrown him under the fucking bus every bloody time. Well, let's the poor bloke now is he's suffering from a huge amount of PTSD. He doesn't know where the hell he is anymore. It's
no,
just so awful. It really is awful. And I feel so sorry for Archie Gray because he's given everything he can possibly give to us. And now looking at him yesterday and the last couple of games where he's been played out of position again after being dumped unceremoniously for God knows how long, because he was no longer suited to the whatever god awful tactics Ange had invented in his own mind.
yeah,
He looks like a shell. When he was playing out of position in that central defensive position, you could see he was giving it his all. He was up for it. He was motivated. He was giving it everything, even if it wasn't necessarily being 100% successful. But now, I lost count the amount of times where he kicked the ball out of touch when he was trying to pass the ball up the line yesterday,
it was
and he was just
dreadful.
going. He was going out of touch. The bloke is shot. The guy is absolutely shot because he has been so poorly managed. And Archie Gray is just one extreme example. But you look at a lot of them. They just don't know what the hell they're doing because nobody's coaching them. Because Ange has changed his tactics so many times. Nobody actually knows what tactics he actually plays. Yesterday,
I
he
I
went
just
he went back
I
to Ange ball for a period yesterday. He went back to a high line yesterday, and
yeah.
guess that's how their 2 goals came from.
He's a moron. And I apologise to any morons who are listening and thinking, hang on a minute, I'm not that stupid. I couldn't cause that much damage. And I've been diagnosed as a moron decades ago. But he is absolutely shocking. I mean, you say he go to Ange Ball. I honestly think that the teams that he picks, they go out and they are just trying not to lose because they are inherently, when you get down to it, you go back to it, they're footballers who don't want to lose. And I think that Ange has been tolerating them marshalling themselves and, if you like, managing themselves on the basis that he doesn't really give a damn what's happened as long as the pain stops. And this
Well,
business of, oh, it's Ange Ball, it isn't Ange Ball, it's not Ange Ball. It might have lapsed into something yesterday, but as you say, that's where the goals came from, because sides coming to play us know, and this, in fact, kind of almost proves the point if you believe that what I'm positing here, is that sides know how to combat Ange Ball, the master tactician himself. So this is why the starting 11 doesn't really look like Ange Ball anymore, because it's a self-preservation operation mode that they're going into. They
well,
know
if
that
you
if they do exactly what he says, they're going to end up in tears. And we get this
And
loop fed to us after the games where he says, "Well, we weren't really at our best, like they weren't listening to me."
so let's just take this thing about yesterday. So they're resting players. Okay.
Apart from Kulusevski, of course.
As per usual, you must be a soothsayer of some description because you took the words right out of my mouth
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
But of course, then the Ange sexuals came back with, but he needs minutes. No, he doesn't. He's had shitloads of minutes all season. The guy was burnt out before he got injured.
He's got
He just
minutes
needs.
to give away. He doesn't need minutes. He is overstocked with midgets, midgets with very, very small minutes. But he's
Yeah.
overstocked. He needs people to come and take minutes from him. That's the and this is the beauty of the insanity of Thick Dundee, that he's talking about managing minutes, but he's doing it upside down.
Yeah.
No way
And
Kulusevski should have played yesterday. No way on God's green earth. No way. He should have been. I mean, the guy, we had Chris's joke about Chernobyl and him looking knackered and all the rest of it, but he didn't need to play that game. And I tell you, the guy I was with this morning is a Villa fan, and Villa fans, I couldn't tell you, they're the nicest fans I've ever met. Living in West Midlands now, over a decade. Nicest football fans you'll meet. And maybe I just haven't met the right ones from another club. And they're all saying that they think they're going to absolutely interfere with us. They're really going to do a number on us, because we're seen as a side that's just giving away points.
Well, but you look at, again, you come back to this thing about we were resting players because I've got to manage things. Navigate things. Honestly, I don't think I'll ever get out of my head now.
Sorry, I've just got to navigate my wallet from this part of my desk to the bit in the middle there. There you go. Just navigate it.
So if you truly, if you judge based on previous performances about who you want to see, who is his top players, right? So what is he saying about yesterday's squad? Because you had Porro, you had Bentancur, you had Kulusevski. So that's 3 players there. You could argue Spence potentially because I don't think whilst he's not been great recently, nobody's been great, and really has he done that much wrong during the course of when he has played? So you then had Bissouma on. You then brings off Bissouma on. So there doesn't seem to be any flow as to, well, is he saying that those people who played yesterday won't be starting in Bilbao? Well, no, it doesn't make sense because you know that Porro will probably start, and you know that Bentancur, will start, and if Kulusevski's if he's anywhere near fit, he should. Well, if he is fit, he should start.
But again,
he's probably our only creative player.
That's fit despite what the coach has done to him.
Yeah. And again, he went off sort of injured yesterday. I haven't heard much about it, so I don't know what. I don't think it's that serious from what I can understand, but we don't really know. So I'm just all over the place in terms of understanding what it is exactly that this guy was. People are saying, oh, we wanted to rest players, because we want it for the final. We've basically given up on the league. Okay, I get that. Well, then just play all the boys. Just play all the youth, because all you then do is you get 2 or 3 games where you can see what they're about, because you're not invested in the league anymore. You can't come in less than 17. So let's just see what they're about.
But you see, the trouble is that, Tony, is that you use that awful phrase that I don't think you understand the severity of, and I'm not having a go at you, but see what they're all about. That would prove Ange wrong, because we know there are some good players in that academy. Once you get past all the pish and wind and all the rubbish we've heard over the years, we've seen glimpses of these guys. We've seen, for example, Manor Solomon. We've seen Donnelly. We've seen Moore. We've seen these guys. He wants to loan them out. He wants to freeze them out. He wants to isolate them. He doesn't want to show you Moore at his best. He doesn't want to show you a player that he's kept in the loop with his minutes and his minute management, his midget management. He wants to show you that he was right. I mean, go back. I urge you, go back and watch the video, the pre-rehearsed, because that's why the camera from the club was in there. The pre-rehearsed, I'm going to come in and thank everybody clip that we had to sit through. And you get the sort of, shh, 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 because that was his fucking moment. That was his tonight, Matthew. I am a football manager.
Well, that was
Mike Bassett on steroids.
that recording was for the benefit of the Australian press back home.
Wasn't it
just to say,
just? Wasn't it just?
look at our lad, look at our boy. He's done bloody well, that boy.
Only somebody who was, and I use this phrase advisedly for anybody who doesn't have any knowledge about things outside their own village. In the advised medical terms of the American community, medical community, anybody who wasn't severely retarded would tell you that a speech that thanks Fraser Forster for his contribution is heading in the wrong bloody direction. I don't get it. Fraser Forster is a lunk. He's no good. His value is now beneath £1 million. And that's not because he's not had minutes, you nitwits. It's because he's a really, really, really toilety, crappy goalkeeper. But he was thanked in that as a catalyst to then allow him to shoehorn him and his coaching staff in. I mean, he's told us himself. He's told us himself, I've got a bright future.
Do you know what that was?
I've got a comment just to share with you from a guy on the YouTube thing. Clown must think we came down in the last shower of rain, couldn't manage a Wendy's.
Do you know what that looked like to me? You know when you got the Oscars acceptance speech where they come up for best, they get the best actor speech. He says, I'm just so touched and so proud. And of course, I couldn't have done it without my amazing collaboration of all my fellow actors, this, that, the other. The Doris the Tea Lady, blah 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 blah. And that is exactly what it was. But again, it was all look at me. Aren't I the benevolent one? I'm doling out these little tidbits for you.
But also as well, I'd go one further. First of all, it was an acceptance speech, and you called that absolutely right. But you know why he gave it there? Because he couldn't guarantee he was getting an opportunity to give it, and it would have been thoroughly inappropriate to give it after he lost in the final.
Yeah.
Because you can't turn around and start with your, well, of course, I'd like to thank my parents and, of course, the midwife that helped deliver me and da-da-da-da-da-da. You don't get to make those speeches if you don't win an award. And this is the problem that we've got with all of this mob that are so like, oh, don't worry about the league. We're going to be in the final. No, you are going to be in a final in a clown car that squirts water out of the headlamps. And when you hit the beep, beep, confetti flies out the exhaust pipe. A clown car driven by Angelos, the party clown.
Well, this is
the John Wayne Gacy of clowns.
Steady on. Okay, viewers, we just took a really deep dive down there.
Hey kiddies!
We're steadily diving into Fritzl territory again.
And just when you thought it was safe to come back to the podcast.
But honestly, it's just mind blowing. The thing is that professionals, and we are talking about people who are paid to do a job. What's one of them? Okay, when you look at there's a difference between professionals and winners. Yeah. Now winners go, great, we got into a final, but we've done fuck all yet. Professionals go, look at us, we've got into a final. Like it is an achievement. Don't get me wrong, of course it's an achievement. But you don't celebrate, you don't start lauding yourself, you don't start patting yourself on the back till you've won a damn thing.
Well, you've seen what's happened over the road, haven't you? The Man United coach has already come out and said, if we don't do something spectacular, I won't be here next season. Because he isn't a narcissist. And I can't emphasize this enough. Because a normal person would say, oh, yes, well, I'm a fantastic father. Mate, your child is a couple of weeks old. Talk to us when you've house trained it, potty trained it, and it hasn't ended up either on smack or in heroin or in prison or something. You don't tell people what a great father you are when the child is still bundled in swaddling clothes. Yeah, but you don't do it. You don't do it.
Yeah, but you know what Angie's response to that would be if this is a joke, kids. This is just a joke, kids. Before you start jumping down throats in the comment section, if one of these kids suddenly ended up as a smackhead in prison and murdered somebody, Angie's response would like to be, where did he go wrong, rather than where did I go wrong?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I thought you were actually going to say I always had suspicious thoughts about the quality of the Wi-Fi chose, but no, but anything to avoid him being in the frame. Whereas if this kid, say Ange isn't, but Ange is a football coach. Presume his wife perhaps is just a housewife. If the kid turns out to be an amazing violinist, is he going to take credit for that? I'm not seeing a link between the cooking and the cleaning and all the other good things that women do that don't have professional things, and him wandering around going, "Come on, mate! I'll tell you a story about days around the campfire. There was me and
Right.
Pushkas, right? Wait, I just don't see where, and I just think it's becoming increasingly stark where it, as you said quite rightly, where me becomes we. The moment you start veering towards danger, there's no I. It was we. And then when things go well, and of course we've got a fantastic managerial team behind everything. Unbelievable. I mean, there really is no shame. There is no shame to this guy whatsoever. But we're maniacs. We don't really support this club because we're not indoctrinating people with this gramophone needle of Ange is a good guy because he did
Well,
amazing things in Japan and Scotland. I mean, just give me a break.
well, he's had 2 years now with a rebuild, and you accept that time is required to turn things around a little bit. You accept that. That's all part of the process. But a rebuild involves actually getting a little bit better than you were previously. You know, just
But
just just as a metric, hey, just as a metric, right?
but we're
If
so
you if you tear down a building, because it's structurally unsound, and then you build something else which is even worse than the previous one you just built, then
yes.
you've not rebuilt it, have you?
Well, we're just really unreasonable because he did finish fifth. I mean, this is like two people looking at a picture telling you different things, and one of them is telling you that everything's beautiful, and the other one's saying this looks like it was drawn by a drunk 10-year-old. And you're saying, well, he had a good new manager bounce, and his system, which worked in the arse end of nowhere, the footballing, go back to the leading manufacturer in skiwear, Fiji. The footballing masterclasses held in Japan and Scotland. That worked there. So it worked here until people worked it out because you're dealing with a different level. So his new manager bounce, and I managed to kid a few people, bounce, his moments in the sunshine, then fizzled out. And if you look at his form overall, you meld those two periods of footballing prowess together, you've got a guy that has lost more games than he's won. His track record is a car crash. It's a skip fire. And when the flames go out, the body is then eaten by rats that have got into the skip.
And over 250 million invested in the squad to boot.
Which he is managing on a day-to-day basis. I mean, he is just yet another one of those crisis managers that we've all met who says, I'm fighting fires. And you know that in their bucket marked emergency water, there is butane. They only make things worse.
Well,
I mean, but his inability to take any responsibility is extraordinary. He is itching and he's hanging his hat on this business of I always win in my second season. So should he be able to luck his way to a victory, which it would be luck, it would absolutely be luck, and he must be absolutely beating himself up. No wonder he's so quick to say, I don't want to talk about Manchester United. I wouldn't want to talk about Manchester United if I was in his shoes. I'd want to go back to the happy, jollier times when we were playing, FC Barely Athletic, who were 9-1.
Well, Chris yesterday on our chat, on the group chat, posted something I thought was really significant. Again, this goes back to Ange's judgment. The Dortmund striker Girassi was offered to us when he was available. He was offered to us something like 12 million, but Ange refused because he preferred Timo Werner.
Holy fuck! Yeah, I mean the thing is, and this is the other side to Ange, which I think I mentioned only maybe once or 1,000 times subsequently, previously, is that he thinks he's feathering his nest by repeating the gospel according to St. Daniel. So the idea that you get Timo Werner in and you get all these other players that are effectively homeless in the world of football. I mean, Werner isn't wanted back at his club. He isn't wanted anywhere. 165 grand a week.
Crazy, isn't it? Absolutely crazy. And go back to yesterday, comparing the two managers. Glasner had a terrible start to the season. Absolutely terrible. Couldn't win a game for Toffee. Ironically, Dr. Tottenham came to town, gave him the necessary life support he needed. And ever since then, it was literally, I think it was very close, I would imagine. Sort of a kind of a last, not so much a last right scenario, but there was lots of talk going around. Even though I thought he'd done
last naming rights.
Oh dear, the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, brought to you in association with Pope Leo. But he recognised that things were wrong, and guess what? He turned it around, and now at a very competitive club. They're in the FA Cup final, and they're playing good football, solid football. Okay, it's not going to rip the floors up, but it's solid football. It's attractive football. And they could go toe to toe with the likes of Arsenal and what have you, and do really well. Now that's an example of someone who recognises that things aren't going well and decides he has to do something about it, and also has the ability to do something about it, as opposed to, and in my case for the prosecution, my lord, we have Exhibit B, Ange, who has had 10 games where he did reasonably well, and after that it's been an absolute fuckfest.
It's been a shit show. I hated it. I thought it was quite enjoyable.
and it's not, but instead of actually going, okay, we recognise the fact that we recognise the fact it's not doing well.
Yeah.
We're gonna do something about it and change it. It's just carried on with the same thing, and it's just gone further and further and further and further down, to where we are now. Now, people might say, but we're in Europe, but we're in a final. Guess what? Crystal Palace are in a final too, and they're better in the league.
I said before the Palace game, because I'm a maniac, unhinged, unrepentant, and I said, looking at the form guide, they had drawn their last four, if I'm correct, and I think they'd lost the fifth one. And I said, to me, being an unhinged maniac, that showed that somebody had started to get control of the rudder of the ship, of the steering wheel.
Well, was he actually navigating properly? Was he navigating, do you think?
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, sorry, when you say navigating, I just get this picture of somebody asleep with their head under a newspaper, and when they breathe out, you get like an old Three Stooges thing, But yeah, so you've got this guy who's suddenly drawing games after experiencing lots of losses, picking up the odd point or two against Dross, that was going to be relegated. And I thought maybe this guy, as I say, has got one hand back on the rudder or on the steering wheel, whatever you want to call it. And lo and behold, play somebody as bad as Spurs, as simply horrible, as shocking a side as Spurs, who are 16th in the division. And what a surprise. What a surprise. You pick up 3 points. And the two instances, as you say, your two instances where you could say, yeah, I'm getting a little bit of an Ange Ball vibe there, is when it really fell apart, because the sides have worked it out, and they worked it out a long time ago. In fact, if you want the day they worked it out, was the day we played Chelsea.
Yep. And also, if you want to know how Crystal Palace worked out, it's because they had a manager who actually just does his due diligence on the club in front of him. He actually knows what they're going, whilst he won't know the squad, he knows what they typically play like. He'll go back and watch the film. He'll go back and do loads of stuff to prepare his players. And then he decides it's more important to me to actually beat this team with a full strength team, and that I am going to be successful, even though I'm playing in a cup final next weekend, even though our team is playing in a cup final next weekend. It's more important to go into that cup final with a winning habit and on off the back of a really good win, where you're feeling, where your confidence is up, your gander is up, and you're ready to go.
No, everything you've said about developing a winning habit is true, and it also extends beyond the players that are, the starting 11, whereby you have people in the fold, and he has had for his entire period, I would suggest, with us, players who have been on the bench and players who have not been on the bench who he doesn't want to know. Like, for example, I don't know what's gone on, and it's irrelevant as to what I think of the players because they're in the same boat. But the difference between Sergio Reguilon and Mikey Moore is negligible. The difference between Manor Solomon and Sergio Reguilon is negligible. But the difference is really that Sergio Reguilon can't even beg up a loan with anybody else, and Manor Solomon is doing the bizzo for Leeds United Football Club. But this guy doesn't have the wit or the imagination. And somebody who, again, how dare I? What, again, more craziness from the master himself. But somebody who had a bit of bite and a bit of zeal and a bit of wit and energy about them might have stood up to Daniel Levy, which I know is a terrible career choice, and said, you're loaning Manor Solomon out. I've seen him in training. I've seen him play for us a few times. I've seen him play for other people more. Looks to me like a footballer that I really ought to have my squad. Oh, no, we don't want these people Jewing the place up. Yeah, send him to Leeds United. They don't mind Jews there. We'll send him up there. Somebody should have stood up to Daniel Levy and said to him, for footballing reasons, to use that dreadful phrase, but for footballing reasons, this is a player that we should have inside the tent whizzing out. And I just find
you're being horribly disingenuous. You really are. You're being absolutely awful.
I'm letting my feelings clutter up Manor Solomon's stats for Leeds United.
I think it's absolutely terrible that you think that Ange hasn't stood up to our grand esteemed leader. Honestly, I really do. I mean, after all, he was the one who fought to get Timo Werner and persuaded Daniel to fork out £165,000 a week to get Timo in the team. So come on.
Sorry. I think not only are you right, because I'm now thinking of the 2-hour phone call that he had with the footballing dynamite, the stick of dynamite that's been lit, that is Matthias Tell.
Yeah.
I mean, if anybody showed what they're really made of when it comes to football, it was begging like a son of a bitch for that guy to come and spend time with us.
And based on your comments about standing up to a manager, I seem to recall. Now, just correct me if I'm wrong. My brain isn't as good as it used to be. With my advanced years and what have you. But I seem to remember some. Let's just think. Did we not have two coaches who recently did exactly that? What happened?
But that's what I said. I mean, this is very bad for your career expectancy at Tottenham Hotspur. Because you had Tony Conte who said, as I say, live on TV, but we ignored that because Alistair Gold said he was just going on his little honeybobs to Italy. We had a guy who went absolute meltdown and said, always this club, there's one continuous continuity factor. I don't know what it is. It's best I say nothing, blah, blah, blah. This club is hell-bent on losing. That's the methodology. That's the mechanism. That's the business model they employ on the park. And I can only imagine, based on what Jose Mourinho was allowed to say on the Amazon documentary, that he said something particularly unpleasant to Daniel Levy the week before the Manchester City final, that he wasn't allowed to play, which I think is a fantastic turn of phrase. Don't say no. We sacked him 6 days before the final, but it was a final that he wasn't allowed to play, and that sums up the narrow-minded pettiness at this club.
But
I mean, I spoke to somebody very recently, and again, this is all information that isn't worth even putting in a blog post, but you can sort of just throw it into something like this, and it's quite helpful. Daniel Levy doesn't let anything happen without him saying, okay, then. So if they're signing for a packet of crisps, a box of crisps that comes in, goods inward, that was ordered after he okayed it. There isn't something that isn't viewed to the nth degree. So if you're a manager working under Levy, so you're the refreshments and beverages manager, for example, he will oversee the order that you put out before it hits the supplier. There
Now,
isn't anything. This is micromanaging. I always suspected it, but the source was excellent, as I've said before. I don't talk to idiots, and but this guy made it very clear to me. In fact, it comes from two people that there is no minutia of management control, man management that this guy doesn't do. So whatever your job is, wherever you say to people, "Oh, I'm the so and so manager" or whatever at Tottenham. No, you're not really doing the job. You're undermined at every single turn, because never in a single day would you put the phone down and say, "That's fine, yeah, go ahead, order that," and put the phone down. It has to go through him first. So
but and before
every phone call you have finishes with, "Oh, just have to run that past Daniel," but I would imagine that'll be okay.
and before people go, aha, because now you've now locked yourself into a logic trap where it's no longer Angie's fault. because we know that what happened in the background with Leave It Exit. We know that's always going to be the main reason. We always know that. But ultimately, Angie's there to do a job. He's been given the money to do a job. He has spent poorly, extremely poorly. He's made terrible choices. And despite the thing, and
this isn't a good end of year report card that we're penning here. He spent poorly, made terrible choices, but on an upbeat note, yeah, his trousers didn't fall down. He didn't poop everywhere.
Damn it! Have you got my school report from when I was 15? Have you?
But he seems a quite outgoing chap. Once we've cleared the mess up,
yeah, he's capable of holding more than one thought at a time in his head.
Is capable of holding a Cure orange without wetting his trousers.
Yeah, I'm worried. I'm worried about the narcissistic tendencies.
Yeah, don't let him into a travel agent and start looking at brochures for Poland. But no, I mean it's just remarkable. So we get this really nasty hybrid. I remember speaking to a dog psychologist to talk about tangent conversations, and she was saying about the business of mixtures of dogs. And of course, Dachshunds are amongst the most dangerous dogs in the world. They've got teeth like glass. They're bred for going down holes and attacking badgers. Okay, so just think about that. Probably the closest thing we have in the UK to a bear, right? So yes, they're bad. But the second most dangerous dog are those hybrid dogs. So you know, a Labradoodle or a cocker, whatever, you know, a cockadoodle or whatever, because
Cockapoo.
Because you think you're getting the best, the cuddliest, the most loveliest, adorable facets of it. But what you can get is you can get a dog that looks like it's just taken a bad E, because the best parts haven't come through the DNA chain, and you've got the dog that has no attention span whatsoever, and then you get the dog that isn't very bright. So you've got this thing that just wants to kill animate and inanimate objects. And this is what we've got. And this is what we've got with Thick Dundee. We've got a guy who doesn't know how to coach, and he's quoting chapters from the Daniel Levy playbook.
What was in your orange juice this morning?
No, but I was just thinking. We had this South African woman coming to look at our dog because he was a flipping handful when we got him, and it was great because the course only lasted a week because she realised he was untrainable. So I mastered this fantastic command: Bernie, do what you want. And he was brilliant every single time.
He obeyed. He
Absolutely obeyed. Sometimes he'd run off. Sometimes he'd try and kill somebody. But this is what you've got. So you've got this hybrid of badness, this hybrid of stupidity, where you've got this know-it-all narcissist who wanders around quoting from another narcissist. I wonder why we're not doing any better.
Yes, one does
We've
wonder. One does.
we've never lost more games than we've won under any other coach. I mean, if you can't see that, I don't mean you, but if one can't see that, and if one can't understand and appreciate the insanity of that situation, I mean, where do we go?
But the thing, a last thought on this, because this thing. But those who are saying Angie and again, well, when he wins the Europa League, well, we haven't won it yet. He hasn't won it yet, and let's just examine that thought process and take it to a conclusion here. So you're happy to say that somebody who won a very, don't get me wrong, I love the idea. If we win it, fantastic, we got a trophy, brilliant, no problem. But like you've said many times, I can hold two distinct different thoughts in my head. But is that the true standard of how good a manager actually is? No, it's not. It's the Premier League, because you have to do it week in, week out, and you have to be on your best against, not this season, but in a lot of seasons, it's been 22 teams who have been at it all the time.
100%.
And the true measure of a good manager is how they perform. So yes, he can win the Europa League, but there's this thought within some parts of the fan base. Well, that means because he's won, we need to give him more time. No, you don't. You can have a manager who lucks out on something, but you can still get rid of him. And that's where I am. If he wins it, fantastic, but only on the condition that he gets given a severance package. Say thanks very much for the trophy, Ange. Off you fuck.
There's I mean, we're going around in circles here to a degree, and certainly there's no more of a circular argument than me. But this business with Ange, it's about how long you can suspend your disbelief, is to how long you can invest in him and how strongly you can back him. And I just simply cannot. I mean, my brain isn't like that because my brain works. I cannot simply just put out of my mind that we've lost 20 Premier League games and that we're cigarette paper away from relegation, apart from the fact there are three really drossier teams beneath us. So yeah, we're in the final of a cup where everybody we've played, well, virtually everybody we played out of the 10 or 11 games, it was 7, 8, 9, 10 to 1. But I can put that out of my head, and I can put the league position out of my head because we're in the final. That just doesn't compute. But
also, two of those teams in the bottom half beat us at home.
Yeah. I mean, if you a fortress which is made of plasticine and plaster of Paris, but I mean, but it's just extraordinary that, because if somebody had said to you at the beginning, you know, they were like, oh, would you have taken a point against Arsenal, you know, before the game and all the rest of it, the damage limitation sort of thought. But if somebody had said Crystal Palace at home a few games before the end of the season, what are your thoughts? You'd kind of think it was pretty much of a banker. There's no easy games in the Premier League, but it's Palace. You know, it's like playing Southampton or Norwich or Fulham or some team that's always sort of there or there around the wrong end of the table. But we didn't look like anywhere near scoring a goal. They had at least, I would say, at least 2 goals that they should have, perhaps could have, would have on another day.
Yeah.
That definitely could have been a 4-0 drubbing.
Well, I called it on Friday, mate, and I'm, not one who, when we, not having any narcissistic tendencies here, I called it on Friday. I said on Friday we're going to get our asses handed to us by Palace because I knew they were going to be up for it for all the reasons they were up for it.
And they rested players knowing that they had a final coming next game round. And we rested the wrong players for a game that's in 10 days.
I just wish we'd rested the manager. That would have been a lot easier, wouldn't it?
I just despair. So, is this a good place to draw a line and assume the position?
I think we've beaten that corpse enough, don't you?
Look, lads, the horse isn't getting up anymore. This is no longer a sport.
Yeah, mate, keep. You know, when you work in a mortuary and you keep your Coca-Cola cold by shoving it up someone's arse, is no way to go through life.
And I wonder how many E numbers were in your sugar puffs this morning, sweetheart. Right, on behalf of John Wayne Gacy, Chris B, who couldn't even be bothered to show up, probably drunk in an airport, Tony, and my very good self. Good luck for now. Keep it Tottenham.